It started with 2 bullets fired on a side street in Sarajevo. A single moment of violence that didn't just end a life, but ignited the entire world.
Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, was dead. But the silence that followed the gunshots was only the deep breath before the scream. Europe was a powder keg. A complex web of secret alliances and treaties meant that a local conflict in the Balkans couldn't stay local for long. When Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, the dominoes fell. Russia mobilized. Germany backed Austria. France backed Russia. In a matter of days, the world was at war. The tragedy was the optimism. Young men lined up by the thousands, told by their leaders that it would be a glorious adventure and that they would all be home by Christmas.
Germany launched the Schlieffen Plan, a massive hammer blow designed to knock out France quickly by smashing through neutral Belgium. Speed was their only option.
But the French held on. At the Battle of the Marne, desperate reinforcements were ferried to the front in Paris taxicabs. The German advance was halted.
With the movement stopped, the armies did the only thing they could to survive modern firepower. They dug. From the Swiss border to the North Sea, a star was cut across the face of Europe.
This was the Western Front. For the next 4 years, the battle lines would barely move more than a few miles, but millions would die fighting for inches of mud. Life in the trenches was a distinct kind of hell. It wasn't just the enemy trying to kill you. It was the cold, the lice, the rats, and the relentless, sucking mud.
Between the opposing trenches lay no man's land, a moonscape of shell craters, barbed wire, and the unburied dead, where any movement invited a sniper's bullet. Yet humanity flickered briefly. On Christmas 1914, soldiers on both sides defied orders, crossed into no man's land, sang carols, and played football. It was the last gasp of the old world's chivalry. By 1915, the romance was dead. The war had become an industrial slaughterhouse. Artillery ruled the battlefield, churning the earth and burying men alive. The machine gun changed warfare forever. A single crew could mow down hundreds of charging soldiers in minutes. Gallantry was no match for 600 rounds per minute. Then came something even more terrifying. At Ypres, the Germans released chlorine gas. The wind carried a green cloud of death that burned lungs and drowned men from the inside out. The chemical war had begun. Mustard gas and phosgene followed. Soldiers were forced to wear suffocating masks, fighting not just the enemy, but their own ability to breathe. Above the mud, a different war was fought. Frail biplanes of wood and canvas dueled in the clouds. Knights of the air, like the Red Baron, became legends, but their life expectancy was measured in weeks. At sea, there was no safety. German U-boats prowled the Atlantic, sinking supply ships and starving Britain. The rules of naval warfare were rewritten by the torpedo. In 1915, the ocean liner Lusitania was torpedoed. Over 1,000 civilians died, including many Americans. Public opinion in the United States began to turn against Germany. 1916 brought the meat grinder. At Verdun, the German Chief of Staff Falkenhayn planned to bleed France white. It became the longest battle of the war. The French battle cry was, "They shall not pass." For 300 days and nights, men were fed into a furnace of artillery. Over 700,000 casualties were sustained in a battle for a few desolate hills. To relieve pressure on Verdun, the British launched the Battle of the Somme. After a week of bombardment, they believed the German wire was cut and the defenders dead. They were wrong. The Germans simply emerged from deep bunkers and manned their machine guns. On the first day alone, the British Army suffered nearly 60,000 casualties. The Somme also saw the debut of a new terrifying beast, the tank.
Though slow and prone to breaking down, these metal monsters hinted at the future of mechanized warfare.
The war wasn't just in France. In Gallipoli, Allied forces tried to knock the Ottoman Empire out of the war. It ended in a disastrous retreat, forging the national identities of Australia and New Zealand in blood.
In the Alps, Italians and Austrians fought among the clouds. They hauled cannons of mountain peaks and fought amidst avalanches that killed as many men as the bullets did.
In the deserts of the Middle East, T.E. Lawrence helped incite the Arab revolt, using guerrilla tactics to sever the Ottoman supply lines.
Total war meant everyone was involved. With men at the front, women stepped into factories, building the weapons and shells that sustained the conflict. Society changed overnight. By 1917, the strain broke Russia. The Tsar was overthrown, and the Bolsheviks rose to power. Russia signed a peace treaty with Germany, freeing up thousands of German troops for the West.
Germany seemed poised to win. But then, a fatal mistake. The Zimmermann telegram, a German proposal to Mexico to attack the U.S., was intercepted.
President Wilson declared war. The industrial might of the United States and millions of fresh troops began to pour across the Atlantic.
Germany knew time was running out. In spring 1918, they launched one final, massive offensive. Stormtroopers smashed through Allied lines, getting within shelling distance of Paris.
But the German army had outrun its supply lines. They were starving, exhausted, and decimated by the Spanish flu. The offensive stalled.
The Allies counterattacked. The 100 Days Offensive broke the German back. The Hindenburg Line, the supposedly impregnable German defense system, was shattered.
Germany's allies surrendered one by one. Bulgaria, the Ottomans, Austria-Hungary. At home, the German people were starving, and the navy mutinied. The Kaiser abdicated.
In a railway carriage in the forest of Compiègne, the Germans signed the armistice. The guns were set to fall silent at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month.
Fighting continued until the very last minute. Men died at 10:59 a.m. Then, at 11 a.m., a silence fell over the Western Front that was louder than the shelling.
The world rejoiced. The Great War was over. But the cost was staggering. 9 million soldiers dead, 21 million wounded, empires erased from the map. The peace treaty signed at Versailles redrew the world. It placed harsh penalties on Germany, sowing the seeds of resentment that would lead to an even darker conflict 20 years later. Those who returned were forever changed. They were the lost generation, men with broken minds and broken bodies, trying to fit back into a world that couldn't understand what they had seen. From the fields of Flanders to the beaches of Gallipoli, the earth was sown with the bones of a generation. The war to end all wars had only set the stage for the next one.
The poppy became the symbol of remembrance, growing in the churned-up earth where soldiers fell, a reminder of the fragility of peace and the horrific cost of war.
World War I destroyed the old world order. It birthed modern technology, modern medicine, and modern warfare. Its echoes are still heard in the geopolitics of today.
They were fathers, sons, and brothers, farmers, students, and workers. Drawn into a conflict of kings and emperors, they paid the ultimate price. Even today, farmers in France and Belgium still plow up shells and equipment, the iron harvest. The war refuses to be forgotten. We remember them not to glorify war, but to understand the value of peace, to ensure that their sacrifice was not in vain.
If you want to explore more history with us, please subscribe, like this video, and comment below on which battle or event we should cover next. Thanks for watching.